Donna Aurora thought the worst day of her life had been her husband Samuel's funeral, but she was wrong. The worst day came a week later when she opened a drawer and discovered that the farm where she'd lived for 40 years was drowning in debts she didn't even know existed. Alone, with trembling hands and an eviction notice on the table, she looked toward the back of the property and saw the old barn. That place Samuel had kept locked tight for 30 years, forbidding anyone to enter. With nothing to lose and needing answers, Aurora grabbed a hammer and broke the rusted padlock. What she found inside wasn't just old tools or secrets from the past. What was hidden in that darkness would bring Aurora to her knees and make her cry like never before. Stay with me until the end, because you won't believe the silent proof of love Samuel left behind, and how a single key transformed a desperate widow into the most respected woman in the entire region. If you believe that true love shows itself not in words, but in quiet preparation and care, subscribe to this channel. Here we share stories that prove the deepest devotion often works in silence, and that those who truly love us prepare for our future even when they won't be there to see it. Hit that like button so this story reaches someone who needs to remember that they might be more protected than they realize. Because what Samuel built in secret wasn't just valuable objects. It was a fortress of love that would protect his wife long after he was gone. Aurora Bennett sat at her kitchen table as morning light filtered through lace curtains she'd hung 40 years ago when she and Samuel had first moved into the farmhouse. The table was covered with papers, bills, bank statements, legal documents, all stamped with red letters. Overdue, final notice, foreclosure pending. At 68 years old, Aurora had thought she understood grief. Samuel had died 3 weeks ago after a brief illness, and she'd mourned him with the deep, quiet sorrow of a woman who'd spent 45 years married to her best friend. The funeral had been beautiful. Half the county had come to pay respects to Samuel Bennett, the kind, quiet farmer everyone had known and respected. But grief, Aurora was learning, had layers. And the layer she was experiencing now was far worse than the pain of loss. This was the terror of discovering that everything she'd thought was secure was actually crumbling beneath her feet. She picked up the bank statement again, hoping the numbers would somehow change. They didn't. The farm, 120 acres of land that had been in Samuel's family for 3 generations, had a mortgage she'd never known about. $87,000 still owed, with payments 6 months overdue. There were medical bills from Samuel's final illness, $43,000 that insurance hadn't covered, property taxes, $12,000 in arrears, equipment loans, $18,000, credit cards she'd never seen, $9,000, total debt, $169,000, and at the bottom of the pile, the document that made her hands shake, a foreclosure notice from First National Bank. She had 30 days to pay the overdue mortgage and taxes, $23,000, or the bank would seize the property and evict her. 30 days. Aurora had 840 sons in her checking account and a social security check that wouldn't come for 2 more weeks. She didn't understand. Samuel had always handled their finances. He'd told her not to worry, that everything was taken care of. She'd trusted him completely. How could he have left her with this catastrophe? A knock on the door made her jump. Through the window, she saw her son David's truck in the driveway. Her heart sank. She'd been avoiding his calls since the funeral. "Mom, open up," David called. "We need to talk." Aurora opened the door. David was 43, wearing expensive business clothes that looked out of place on the farm. Behind him was his sister Linda, 41, equally polished and urban. "We've been trying to reach you all week," Linda said, pushing past Aurora into the kitchen. She saw the papers spread on the table. "Oh, good. You finally found Dad's financial records." "You knew about this?" Aurora asked. "Of course we knew," David said. "Dad called us 6 months ago when things got bad. He asked us for money. We told him to sell the farm." Aurora felt like she'd been slapped. "Samuel asked you for help, and you said no." "Mum, be realistic," Linda said. "This farm has been a money pit for years. Dad was too stubborn to admit it, but the small farm model doesn't work anymore. You can't compete with corporate agriculture. We told him to sell, downsize, move into town, David added. But he refused. Said he'd figure something out. Clearly he didn't. He died trying, Aurora said quietly. And now you're left with this mess, Linda said, not unkindly. Which is why we're here. We've been looking at your options. David pulled out his own folder of documents. The bank will foreclose in 30 days. You can't stop that. You don't have the money. But we can control what happens next. We've contacted a real estate developer who's interested in the land. They'll pay $280,000. That's barely market value, Aurora said. She didn't know much about finances, but she knew the land was worth more. It's a quick sale, Linda explained. In foreclosure situations, you take what you can get. Here's the breakdown. $169,000 pays off all Dad's debts. The remaining $111,000 gets split. You get $55,000. David and I split the rest as our inheritance. Inheritance? Aurora repeated. Your father just died, and you're already… Mom, we're being practical, David interrupted. With $55,000, you can rent a nice apartment in town. Or better yet, we've found a wonderful senior living community in Riverside. It's only $2,000 a month, so your money would last years. You'd have activities, healthcare on site, other people your age. You want to put me in a home. We want you taken care of, Linda said. You're 68. You can't manage this farm alone. You couldn't manage it with Dad alive, honestly. This is the smart move for everyone. Aurora looked at her children, these strangers who looked at her life as a problem to be solved, her home as an asset to be liquidated. Get out, she said quietly. Mom, get out of my house. This farm is not for sale. I'm not going to any senior facility. This is my home. Your father and I built our life here. I'm not giving it up. David's expression hardened. You have 30 days before the bank takes it anyway. We're trying to help you salvage something from this disaster. We'll be back in a week, Linda said. Hopefully you'll be more reasonable by then. The developer's offer won't last forever. They left. Aurora sat back down at the table and buried her face in her hands. They were right, weren't they? She had no way to pay the debts. The bank would foreclose. She'd lose everything regardless of what she wanted. She looked out the kitchen window toward the back of the property, past the vegetable garden she'd maintained for 40 years, past the chicken coop and the old equipment shed, to the large barn at the property's edge. The barn was dark, weathered wood, maybe 50 feet long and 30 feet wide, built by Samuel's grandfather in the 1940s. It had always been there, solid and permanent, and locked, always locked. Samuel had padlocked that barn 30 years ago. He'd told Aurora it was his workshop, his private space where he tinkered with projects. She'd respected that. Every marriage needed boundaries, private spaces. She'd never asked to go inside, and Samuel had never offered to show her. But now Samuel was gone, and Aurora was desperate. Maybe there was something in that barn. Old equipment she could sell, tools, anything that might help her raise money to save the farm. She'd never broken Samuel's trust before, but she had no choice now. Aurora went to the garage and found a hammer and crowbar. She walked across the property to the barn, her heart pounding. The padlock was old and rusted, but still solid. "Forgive me, Samuel," she whispered, "but I have to know." She swung the hammer. The padlock resisted. Aurora had to hit it 4 times before the rusted metal finally gave way and clattered to the ground. She stood in front of the barn doors, breathing hard from exertion and emotion. For 30 years this building had been off limits, a mystery, Samuel's private domain that she'd never questioned because she'd trusted him completely. Now she was about to see what he'd hidden. Aurora pulled on the barn doors. They were heavy, moving reluctantly on hinges that hadn't been opened in who knows how long. Light spilled into the dark interior, and dust motes swirled in the sudden brightness. Aurora stepped inside and stopped, her eyes adjusting to the dimness. She'd expected to see what? Old farm equipment, broken tools, maybe a workshop with Samuel's projects, whatever those had been. What she saw made no sense. The barn's interior was immaculate. The floor was swept clean. The walls were lined with shelves and workbenches, all organized with precise care. and everywhere she looked were things, beautiful things, furniture, objects, art. But everything was covered in cloth dust covers, creating ghostly shapes in the filtered light. Aurora walked deeper into the barn, her footsteps echoing. She pulled the cover off the nearest object and gasped. It was a piano. Not just any piano, but a magnificent grand piano, gleaming with a deep mahogany finish. The wood glowed even in the dim light. The keys were pristine. The brass hardware shone. Aurora had never owned a piano. They'd never had money for luxuries like that. Where had this come from? She moved to the next covered shape and pulled away the cloth. A chandelier, crystal, enormous, with dozens of facets catching the light and throwing rainbows across the barn walls. Another cover, an antique dining table, the wood so beautifully grained and polished that Aurora could see her reflection in its surface. Another, a tall case clock, what some people called a grandfather clock, with intricate woodwork and brass detailing. More furniture, more objects. Everywhere she looked, treasures emerged from beneath their protective coverings. Chairs with needlepoint upholstery, cabinets with inlaid wood designs, mirrors in gilded frames, lamps with Tiffany glass shades. Aurora walked through the barn in a daze, pulling covers and discovering wonders. None of this made sense. Where had these things come from? How had Samuel acquired them? And why had he hidden them? She found a workbench at the far end of the barn, and here the mystery deepened. The bench was equipped with restoration tools, delicate brushes, wood stains, polishes, various implements whose purposes Aurora could only guess. There were reference books about antique furniture, guides to wood finishing, manuals on clock repair, and there were photos. Dozens of photos pinned to a corkboard above the bench. Aurora looked at them closely and realized they were before pictures. The same furniture she'd just seen, but in terrible condition. The piano with scratched, faded wood. The chandelier with missing crystals and tarnished brass. The table with water stains and broken veneer. Samuel had restored all of this. Over 30 years in secret, he'd transformed broken, worthless objects into valuable treasures. But why? Aurora's hand touched something on the workbench, an envelope with her name written in Samuel's careful handwriting. Her hands shook as she picked it up. Before she could open it, she heard vehicles approaching. Through the barn's open doors, she saw David's truck and Linda's SUV pulling up to the house. Her children were back, and they were about to see what their father had hidden. Aurora slipped the envelope into her pocket and walked toward the barn entrance. David and Linda were getting out of their vehicles, both looking determined and slightly annoyed. "Mom, we need to talk sense into you," Linda called. "We brought the sale paperwork for you to—" She stopped mid-sentence, staring past Aurora at the open barn doors. "You broke into Dad's barn?" David asked, shocked. "It's my barn now," Aurora said. "And yes, I needed to see what was inside." "What is inside?" Linda asked. "Dad always said it was just his workshop, old tools and projects." "Come see for yourselves," Aurora said. She led them into the barn. She watched their expressions change from curiosity to confusion to stunned amazement as they took in the collection of restored treasures. "What the hell?" David whispered. "Where did all this come from?" "Your father restored them," Aurora said. "Look at the workbench, the photos. He bought broken furniture and objects, and he spent 30 years making them beautiful again." Linda walked to the piano, running her hand along its polished surface. "This is real. This is a genuine Steinway. Even in good condition, these are worth— Mom, this could be worth $40,000 or more." "That chandelier is Baccarat crystal," David said, examining it. "I've seen ones like this in antique shops. At least $15,000. They walked through the barn, their initial shock giving way to calculation. Aurora watched her children price tag their father's life work, and something cold settled in her chest. "Mom, do you understand what this means?" Linda asked excitedly. "We don't have to sell the farm, these antiques. There must be millions of dollars worth of stuff here. We could pay off all the debts and have plenty left over," David added. "We need to get an appraiser in here immediately. Catalog everything. Set up an estate sale or find auction houses." "No," Aurora said. Both her children turned to look at her. "What do you mean, no?" David asked. "Your father left this to me, not to us. To me. You wanted to sell my home and put me in a facility. You saw his debts as my problem. Well, this barn and everything in it is my solution, not yours." "Mom, be reasonable," Linda said. "We're your children. Dad would want us to—" "Your father wanted you to help when he asked 6 months ago, and you refused. You told him to sell the farm he loved. Now you're only interested because you see dollar signs. I want you both to leave." "You can't manage this alone," David protested. "You need help appraising these items, marketing them, handling the legal aspects. Then I'll find help from people who actually care about me, not my assets. Leave. Now." Something in Aurora's voice made her children realize she was serious. They left, but not before Linda said, "We'll be back, Mom. As Dad's heirs, we have legal rights to his estate. You can't cut us out." After they left, Aurora returned to the barn. She stood in the middle of Samuel's life's work, surrounded by beauty he'd created in secret, and pulled out the envelope he'd left for her. Inside was a letter, written in Samuel's handwriting. Aurora sat on a restored bench and read, "My dearest Aurora, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you've discovered my secret. I'm sorry I never told you about the barn. I wanted to so many times, but I was afraid you'd think I was foolish. 30 years ago, I realized the farm was failing. Small farms like ours can't compete anymore. I could see the debts piling up, and I knew I was failing you, failing to provide security, failing to protect our future. I was ashamed. What kind of man can't take care of his wife? Then one day I was at an estate auction, and I saw a beautiful old clock being sold for $20 because it was broken. No one wanted it. But I looked at it and saw what it could be. So I bought it, brought it home, and spent 3 months learning how to repair it. When I finished, it was worth $2,000. That's when I understood. I could buy broken things that no one valued, restore them with patience and care, and create value where everyone else saw only trash. It became my secret work, my way of building security for you, without having to admit the farm was failing. I bought broken furniture at auctions, estate sales, flea markets, pieces that sold for nothing because they were damaged. I brought them to the barn and restored them. It took years to build up the collection you see now. I could never sell any of it. We needed the income from the farm to live, but I knew that one day this collection would be your safety net. I'm sorry about the debts, the farm loans, the medical bills. I kept hoping I'd turn things around. I kept thinking I had more time, but if you're reading this, time ran out on me. The barn is yours now. Every piece in it is yours. Sell what you need to clear the debts and save the farm. But Aurora, please know this. I didn't spend 30 years in secret because I didn't trust you. I did it because I loved you too much to burden you with my failures while I still had breath to fix them. You were always the treasure. These objects are just my way of protecting you after I'm gone. Forever yours, Samuel." Aurora read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming love and gratitude. Samuel had known he was dying. He'd known the debts would fall on her, and he'd spent 30 years preparing her salvation in secret. She looked around the barn with new eyes. This wasn't a collection of antiques. This was love, made tangible. This was a man working quietly, year after year, building a fortress to protect his wife from a future he wouldn't be there to face with her. Aurora folded the letter carefully and put it in her pocket next to her heart. Then she pulled out her phone and started making calls. She needed an appraiser. She needed an attorney, and she needed to show her children that underestimating a woman protected by love was the biggest mistake they could make. The appraiser's name was Margaret Chen, and she arrived the next morning with a young assistant and a professional camera. She was in her 60s with sharp eyes and an air of competence that immediately put Aurora at ease. "Mrs. Bennett," she said, shaking Aurora's hand firmly, "I specialize in antique furniture and decorative arts. When you described what you had, I almost didn't believe it. May I see the collection?" Aurora led her to the barn. She'd spent the previous evening removing all the dust covers, allowing Samuel's work to be fully visible. Morning light streamed through the barn's high windows, illuminating the treasures. Margaret stopped just inside the entrance. "Oh my," she breathed. For the next 4 hours, Margaret and her assistant moved systematically through the barn, photographing each piece, examining it closely, taking notes, and occasionally exclaiming with delight or surprise. "This Chippendale chair, the restoration work is museum quality. Whoever did this understood 18th century joinery techniques perfectly. The veneer work on this secretary desk is extraordinary. This kind of marquetry repair requires incredible skill. Mrs. Bennett, this isn't just a collection of antiques. This is a masterclass in furniture restoration. Your husband was exceptionally talented." Aurora sat on a stool by Samuel's workbench, watching Margaret work, feeling pride swell in her chest. Samuel had been talented. She'd always known he was special, but she'd never understood the full scope of his abilities. By early afternoon, Margaret had completed her assessment. She sat with Aurora at the workbench and pulled out her laptop. "Mrs. Bennett, I need to be very clear with you about what you have here. This collection represents 30 years of careful acquisition and expert restoration. The total value is substantial. Are you prepared to hear the numbers?" "I need to pay off $169,000 in debts and save my farm," Aurora said. "Please tell me that's possible." Margaret smiled. "It's more than possible. Let me walk you through the major pieces." She pulled up her photos and notes. The Steinway grand piano, $45,000 to $55,000 at auction. The Baccarat chandelier, $18,000 to $22,000. The Chippendale dining set, $35,000 to $40,000. The tall case clock, that's a David Rittenhouse piece, very rare, $60,000 to $80,000. She continued through the list. Tiffany lamps, $8,000 each, and there were 4 of them. A Victorian sofa set, $15,000. French provincial armoires, $12,000 each for 3 pieces. A collection of restored oil paintings, $25,000 total. "And then there are the smaller items," Margaret said. "Sterling silver pieces, porcelain, glassware, decorative objects, another $40,000 to $50,000 combined." She looked up at Aurora. "Conservative estimate, selling everything at auction, $380,000 to $450,000. If you're more selective and find private collectors for the rare pieces, potentially over $500,000. Aurora couldn't breathe. $500,000. Samuel had created $500,000 worth of value, piece by piece, year by year, in secret. However, Margaret continued, I would strongly advise against selling the entire collection quickly. Flooding the market reduces prices. And frankly, some of these pieces deserve to be preserved, not just sold. May I make a suggestion? Please, Aurora managed. Sell selectively. Choose pieces that will raise the money you need immediately. Keep the truly exceptional items. The Rittenhouse clock alone is museum quality. If you donated it to a museum, the tax deduction would be substantial, and several pieces could be loaned to museums or historic homes, which creates ongoing value and prestige. I just need to clear the debts and save the farm, Aurora said. I don't care about prestige. Then let me recommend this. Sell the piano, the chandelier, and 3 or 4 of the mid-range pieces at auction next month. That will raise approximately $120,000 to $140,000. Then take the Rittenhouse clock to a private collector I know in Boston. He's been searching for a Rittenhouse for years. He'll pay top dollar. I estimate $85,000 to $95,000, and the sale can happen within a week. That would cover everything, Aurora said, doing the math. $200,000 would pay off all the debts with money left over. Exactly. And you'd still have 75% of the collection intact. This barn could become a personal museum, a gallery, or even a restoration school. Your husband's legacy would live on. A restoration school. Aurora looked around the barn at Samuel's workbench, his tools, his reference books, his life's work, and felt something spark in her imagination. Could you recommend someone who could appraise the clock today? Aurora asked. I need to move fast. The bank gave me 30 days and I'm already down to 23. I'll call my colleague in Boston right now. He can drive down tomorrow. And Mrs. Bennett? Margaret's expression softened. Your husband must have loved you very much. This represents decades of patient work done entirely for your benefit. That's extraordinary devotion. I'm just beginning to understand that, Aurora said quietly. After Margaret left, Aurora sat alone in the barn. She pulled out Samuel's letter and read it again. You were always the treasure. These objects are just my way of protecting you after I'm gone. She'd been so angry at him for leaving her with debts. But Samuel had left her with something far more valuable, proof that she'd been loved beyond measure, and the means to survive without him. Tomorrow she'd start selling pieces to save the farm, but tonight she just wanted to sit in this space Samuel had created and feel his presence surrounding her. Thank you, she whispered to the empty barn. Thank you for loving me this much. The Boston collector, Dr. Harrison Aldrich, arrived the next morning in a Mercedes, dressed in an expensive suit that seemed out of place on Aurora's farm, but his eyes lit up the moment he saw the Rittenhouse clock. Margaret wasn't exaggerating, he breathed, approaching it with the reverence of someone encountering a holy relic. Mrs. Bennet, do you know what you have here? My husband's letter said it was special, Aurora replied. Special? This is a David Rittenhouse tall case clock, circa 1780. Rittenhouse made fewer than 20 clocks in his lifetime. Most are in museums or major collections. To find one that's been privately restored to this condition, he pulled out a jeweler's loupe and examined the clockwork mechanism. The restoration is perfect, historically accurate. Whoever did this understood Rittenhouse's work intimately. How much is it worth? Aurora asked bluntly. She didn't have time for reverent appreciation. She had 22 days until foreclosure. Dr. Aldrich straightened. I'll be honest with you. At auction, this would likely sell for $70,000 to $90,000, possibly more to the right buyer. However, auctions take time. Cataloging, marketing, the actual sale event, then payment processing. You're looking at 3 months minimum. I don't have 3 months, which is why I'm prepared to offer you $92,000 cash, with payment transferred to your account within 24 hours of signing the sale agreement. Aurora did the math. She owed the bank $23,000 immediately to stop foreclosure. The remaining debts totaled $146,000. With $92,000 from the clock and the $120,000 Margaret estimated from the auction pieces, she'd have $212,000 total, more than enough to clear everything and have working capital left over. Sold, Aurora said. Dr. Aldrich smiled. You won't regret this. This clock will be the centerpiece of my collection, and I'll treasure it as much as your husband clearly did. They completed the paperwork in Aurora's kitchen. Dr. Aldrich arranged for professional movers to collect the clock the next day, and 24 hours later, as promised, $92,000 appeared in Aurora's bank account. Aurora sat at the same kitchen table where just days ago she'd been drowning in despair. She pulled up her bank's website and began making payments. First National Bank, $23,000 to clear the overdue mortgage and taxes. Medical Billing Office, $43,000 to clear Samuel's hospital debt. Equipment Financing Company, $18,000. County Tax Office, $12,000. Within an hour, she'd paid off $96,000 in debts. Her remaining balance was still $73,000 in debt, but the immediate foreclosure threat was gone, and Margaret's auction was scheduled for 3 weeks away, which would bring in enough to clear everything else and leave her secure. Aurora called First National Bank and asked to speak with the loan officer handling her foreclosure. Mrs. Bennet, the officer said, his tone patronizing, I'm afraid if you're calling to beg for more time, I'm calling to inform you that I've just paid the $23,000 overdue amount in full. Check your system. The foreclosure is cancelled. There was a pause. Let me verify. Mrs. Bennet, I see the payment. May I ask where you obtained these funds? That's none of your business. The debt is paid. Send me written confirmation that the foreclosure action is withdrawn. Goodbye. She hung up, feeling a surge of satisfaction. For the first time since Samuel's death, she felt powerful instead of helpless. That evening, David and Linda returned. Aurora had been expecting them. Mum, we've consulted with an attorney, Linda said without preamble. As Dad's children, we're entitled to a share of his estate. The barn and its contents are part of that estate. You're welcome to speak with my attorney, Aurora said calmly, handing them a business card. His name is Robert Chen. He specializes in estate law. You hired an attorney? David asked, surprised. I've learned that in this world, you need to protect yourself. Robert has informed me that the barn and its contents were held in trust with me as the sole beneficiary. Samuel set this up 15 years ago. The trust document is clear. None of the barn's contents are part of the probate estate. They belong entirely to me. This was true. Samuel's letter had mentioned the trust, and Aurora had found the documents in his office files. He'd planned even this, protecting the collection from any claim except hers. That can't be legal, Linda protested. It's entirely legal. You're welcome to challenge it in court, but Robert assures me you'll lose and incur substantial legal fees in the process. Or you can accept that your father made his choice about how to protect me and leave me in peace. What about our inheritance? David demanded. We're your children. We deserve something. Aurora looked at her children, these people who'd offered her no comfort in her grief, who'd tried to institutionalize her and sell her home, who'd shown up only when they smelled money. You'll inherit what's left when I die, she said. Until then, I'm using what your father left me to save our farm and build a life. If you're unhappy with that arrangement, you're welcome to contest it in court. But I think you'll find that judges don't look kindly on children who tried to put their mother in a home and sell her property days after her husband's funeral. David's face turned red. This is ridiculous. You can't even manage. I've already paid off enough debt to stop the foreclosure. I have an auction scheduled that will clear the rest, and I'm consulting with experts about turning the barn into a furniture restoration school to preserve your father's legacy and provide income. I'm managing just fine. Now please leave, and don't come back unless you're prepared to treat me with respect. After they left, hopefully for good this time, Aurora returned to the barn. She'd been spending more time here than in the house. Samuel's presence felt stronger in this space he'd created. She found herself at the workbench again, running her hands over the tools he'd used for 30 years. On the corkboard above the bench, pinned among the before and after photos, she noticed something she'd missed before. A small envelope, tucked behind a photo of the Rittenhouse clock. Aurora pulled it down. The envelope was sealed, with her name written on the front, but underneath her name was a note. Open this on a day when you need hope. She opened it. Inside was a short letter in Samuel's handwriting. Aurora, my love, if you found this second letter, it means you've discovered the barn and you're starting to understand what I built for you. But I'm guessing you're also overwhelmed, possibly scared, definitely uncertain about the future. So let me tell you what I see when I look at you. I see the strongest person I've ever known. You raised our children while I was working the farm. You kept our home beautiful on a budget. You made friends in this community who love you. You've lived with grace, kindness, and dignity every day of our marriage. The barn is just objects. You are what's truly valuable. The furniture can be sold, but your strength, your wisdom, your capacity to love and nurture, those are irreplaceable. Don't let anyone make you feel weak or helpless. You're not. You're a woman who commanded my love and admiration for 45 years. You're capable of anything. I wish I could be there to face the future with you, but since I can't, I built you this foundation. What you build on top of it is up to you, and knowing you as I do, it will be magnificent. All my love, forever, Samuel. Aurora pressed the letter to her chest and cried, but this time the tears were healing. Samuel had seen her, really seen her, not as someone who needed saving, but as someone strong enough to save herself, given the right tools. The barn wasn't just financial security. It was Samuel's vote of confidence, his way of saying, I believe in you, now believe in yourself. Aurora wiped her eyes, folded the letter carefully, and looked around the barn with new determination. Samuel had given her the means. Now she'd show him, and everyone else, what she could build with it. 3 weeks later, Margaret's auction house hosted the estate sale in a prestigious gallery in the city. Aurora wore her best dress, the black one she'd worn to Samuel's funeral, but with a pearl necklace Samuel had given her on their 40th anniversary. She wanted to look dignified, not desperate. The auction room was packed. Collectors, dealers, interior designers, and wealthy hobbyists filled the seats. Margaret had marketed the sale brilliantly. The Bennett Collection, 30 years of master restoration. Aurora sat in the front row as her husband's life work went under the hammer. The Steinway piano sold for $52,000, the Baccarat chandelier $24,000, the Chippendale dining set $41,000, the Tiffany lamps $35,000 for all four. Piece after piece exceeded Margaret's estimates. The collectors recognized quality. The restoration work was so expert that several buyers asked about the craftsman wanting to commission similar work. "I'm sorry," Margaret told them. "The artisan passed away, but his widow is preserving his techniques. I'll put you in touch." By the end of the afternoon, the selected pieces had sold for a total of $187,000. Combined with the $92,000 from the Rittenhouse clock, Aurora had $279,000. She paid off every remaining debt. The farm was hers, free and clear, and she had $110,000 left over for operating expenses, repairs, and her new venture, because Aurora had made a decision. She was turning Samuel's barn into the Bennett Restoration School. She'd spent the past 3 weeks consulting with vocational education experts, local community college administrators, and master craftspeople. They'd all been enthusiastic. There was huge demand for furniture restoration training, but few schools taught traditional techniques. Aurora would start small, a 6-month certificate program accepting 10 students. They'd learn in Samuel's barn, using his tools, following his techniques documented in decades of notebooks she'd found. The students would restore furniture that Aurora would source the same way Samuel had, buying broken pieces cheaply at auctions and estate sales. The restored pieces would be sold, with profits split, half to Aurora to fund the school, half to the students as payment for their work. It was a sustainable model that honored Samuel's legacy while providing vocational training for young people. The local paper had covered the story, "Widow turns husband's secret workshop into restoration school." The applications had started pouring in, but not everyone was happy about Aurora's success. David and Linda had heard about the auction results, and they were angry. They showed up at the farm 2 days after the auction, this time with a lawyer, a sharp-faced woman in an expensive suit who introduced herself as Patricia Holloway. "Mrs. Bennett," Patricia said, "my clients believe you've mismanaged their father's estate for your personal benefit. They're prepared to file suit for misappropriation of family assets." Aurora had been expecting this. She gestured them into the kitchen, where Robert Chen, her own attorney, was waiting. "Patricia," Robert said coolly, "how nice to see you again. Still taking cases you know you'll lose?" Patricia's expression soured. "Robert, I should have known you'd be involved." "Mrs. Bennett's case is airtight," Robert said. "Samuel Bennett established an irrevocable trust 15 years ago, placing all contents of the barn in trust for his wife's sole benefit. The trust is not part of the probate estate. His children have no legal claim to it. You know this because I sent you the trust documents last week. We're challenging the trust's validity," Patricia said. "Samuel was ill when he created it. He may not have been competent." "He wasn't ill 15 years ago," Robert countered. "He was in perfect health. The trust was witnessed by 2 attorneys and properly executed. Your challenge will fail. We'll see what a judge says." "Yes, we will. And while we're in court, we'll also discuss how your clients attempted to exploit their recently widowed mother by pressuring her to sell her home days after her husband's funeral so they could claim a premature inheritance. I'm sure the judge will be very interested in that testimony." David stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Mom, you're being unreasonable. We're your children. You deserve what you earn," Aurora said quietly. "You didn't earn this. Your father built it. I'm using it the way he intended. You'll get nothing from me except what I choose to give. And right now, given your behavior, I choose to give nothing." "You're a selfish old woman," Linda spat. "You're stealing our inheritance." I'm living my life, which is something you seem to find unacceptable. Aurora stood. This meeting is over. Patricia, if you want to file your ridiculous lawsuit, go ahead, but know that I'll counter-sue for harassment and emotional distress, and I'll win. Robert, please show them out. After they left, Aurora sat back down, suddenly exhausted. Robert patted her shoulder. You did well, they're bluffing, they won't file suit. Patricia knows it's unwinnable, and she won't want the hit to her reputation. You're safe. I just want to be left alone to run my school and live my life, Aurora said, and you will be. Samuel made sure of that. After Robert left, Aurora walked to the barn, her barn now, truly. The restoration school would open in 2 months. She'd hired a master carpenter to teach alongside her, using Samuel's notebooks and techniques. The first class of students would arrive in September. Aurora stood in the middle of the space, surrounded by the remaining pieces of Samuel's collection, the ones she'd kept for teaching purposes. She thought about how far she'd come in just 6 weeks, from desperation and helplessness to strength and purpose. I hope you're proud, she whispered to Samuel's memory. I hope you can see that I didn't waste what you gave me. I'm building something good, something that will help people and honor you. She felt in that moment a sense of peace. Samuel wasn't there, but his love remained tangible and real in every restored chair and table, in every technique documented in his notebooks, in the foundation he'd built that was letting her soar. 6 months after discovering Samuel's secret, Aurora stood in the barn, now officially the Bennett Restoration School, watching her first class of students complete their final projects. The 10 students ranged in age from 19 to 62. Some were young people looking for a trade. Others were retirees wanting to learn a new skill. All of them had spent 6 months learning traditional furniture restoration using Samuel's methods. Today, they were presenting their final projects, pieces they'd found, purchased with school funds, restored, and would now sell at the school's first public sale. Marcus, a 23-year-old who'd been working dead-end retail jobs, presented a Victorian settee he'd found at an estate sale for $50. He'd repaired the frame, reupholstered it in period-appropriate fabric, and refinished the wood. It would sell for at least $800. Mr. Bennett's notebook showed me how to repair the mortise and tenon joints without using modern screws, Marcus explained. The integrity of the piece is preserved. That's what makes it valuable to collectors. Eleanor, a 58-year-old whose factory job had been eliminated, showed the maple dining table she'd rescued from a barn sale. It was sun-faded and water-damaged. Everyone thought it was trash, but look at the grain now that it's been properly refinished. Samuel's notes on stain matching were invaluable. One by one, the students presented work that would have made Samuel proud. They'd learned not just techniques, but philosophy, how to see potential in broken things, how to honor the original craftspeople's work, how to create value through patience and skill. The public sale that afternoon brought in $12,000 total. After materials and expenses, the profit was $8,000. Aurora gave each student their share, $400 each, with the remaining $4,000 going into the school's operating fund. It's not much, Aurora told them, but it's honest money earned through craftsmanship. Samuel always said that work done with skill and care has inherent dignity. You've all proven that. Several students had already received job offers from furniture stores and antique shops who'd heard about the program. Others were planning to start their own restoration businesses. The school was succeeding beyond Aurora's hopes. After the sale, as she was locking up, Aurora heard a vehicle approaching. Her heart sank when she recognized Linda's SUV, but when Linda got out she was alone, and she looked different, humbled. "Mum," Linda said, "can we talk?" Aurora considered refusing, but she was tired of anger. "Come in." They sat in the barn's small office, a corner Aurora had set up with a desk, filing cabinets, and Samuel's framed photo on the wall. "I came to apologize," Linda said without preamble. "Not because my lawyer said I should, because I'm ashamed." Aurora waited silently. "When Dad died, all I saw was a problem to solve, a situation to manage. I didn't see your grief. I didn't see that you'd lost your partner of 45 years. I just saw debts and property and an elderly mother who'd be my responsibility." Linda's voice cracked. "That's horrible, isn't it? I reduced you to a burden." "Yes, it was horrible," Aurora said. She wouldn't lie to make Linda feel better. "David's not ready to apologize yet. He's still angry. But I've spent 6 months watching you build this school, reading articles about the restoration program, hearing people in town talk about how impressive you are, and I realized I don't know you at all. I've been treating you like a helpless old woman when actually you're stronger than I am." Aurora felt some of the ice around her heart begin to thaw. "Linda, I'm not angry that you thought I needed help. I did need help. I'm angry that your help came with strings attached, that you wanted to solve the problem of me as quickly and cheaply as possible, that you didn't ask what I wanted or needed. You just decided. You're right. I'm sorry. Does this apology come with a request for forgiveness and access to my estate?" Linda shook her head. "No strings, I wanted you to know that I see you now, and I'm proud of you. Dad would be proud of you. Your father left me the tools. I just used them. You did more than that. You turned a collection of furniture into a school that's changing lives. Those students today, they were glowing. You gave them skills and confidence. That's not just using tools. That's leadership." After Linda left, promising to visit again without lawyers or demands, Aurora sat alone in the office. She looked at Samuel's photo, at his kind eyes and gentle smile. "I think I'm going to be okay," she told him. "Better than okay. I think I'm going to build something good here, something that lasts, something that makes a difference." She felt his presence, warm and approving. The love that had built this place surrounded her still. 2 years after discovering Samuel's secret, Aurora stood in the barn during the graduation ceremony for her 5th class of restoration students. The program had grown. She now had 2 instructors, 15 students per semester, and a waiting list of applicants. The barn itself had been expanded. The county had granted permits to add a proper classroom, a larger workshop, and a small gallery where completed projects could be displayed and sold. The Bennett Restoration School had become a recognized vocational program, with graduates finding work across the region. But more than the physical growth, Aurora was proud of the community she'd built. Former students returned regularly to teach workshops, share techniques, or simply visit. The school had become a gathering place for people who valued craftsmanship and traditional skills. Today's graduation included a special guest, Dr. Harrison Aldrich, the collector who'd bought the Rittenhouse clock. He'd asked to speak to the students about the importance of preservation and restoration. 2 years ago, I purchased a clock from Mrs. Bennett, he told the assembled students. But I didn't just buy an antique. I bought a piece of art created by her late husband's dedication and skill. Samuel Bennett spent decades perfecting his craft in solitude, driven by love for his wife. That clock now sits in my collection as a reminder that the most valuable things are created not for profit, but for devotion. After the ceremony, as guests mingled and examined the students' work, David approached Aurora. They hadn't spoken in over a year. "Mom," he said awkwardly, "can we talk?" They walked outside, away from the crowd. David looked uncomfortable. "Linda's been on me for months to come apologize to you. I've been too stubborn. But I'm here now. I'm listening," Aurora said. "I was wrong about everything. I thought I was being practical, but really I was being greedy and cruel. You didn't need me to manage your life. You needed me to trust that you could manage it yourself. Dad understood that. That's why he left you the barn instead of splitting everything with us. Your father loved you," Aurora said, "but he knew you weren't ready to understand what he'd built. Maybe you are now. Can I come visit sometimes? Not to ask for anything, just to see what you're doing here, maybe help if you need it." Aurora considered. David's apology felt genuine, and she was tired of estrangement. "Yes," she said, "you can visit. We'll see how it goes." "Thank you, Mom." After the ceremony, after all the guests had left, Aurora walked through the barn one final time before locking up. She trailed her fingers along Samuel's original workbench now protected under glass as a historical display. On the wall above it was a plaque. The Bennett Restoration School, founded 2023, in honor of Samuel Bennett, 1953 to 2023, who spent 30 years building Love's Fortress in secret, and his wife Aurora, who transformed his legacy into hope for others, restoring broken things, rebuilding broken lives. Aurora stood before the plaque, looking at Samuel's framed photo beside it, the same photo she'd found on his workbench, the one she now kept here to watch over the school. "We did it," she whispered. "Together. Even though you're not here, we built something good, something lasting, something that helps people." She thought about the journey, from desperation and despair to purpose and peace. Samuel had given her the tools to save herself, but she'd built the life that followed. She'd taken his secret workshop and transformed it into a beacon of hope for people who needed skills, purpose, and second chances. The Bennett farm was thriving, the school was successful, her relationship with Linda was healing, and David might follow. She was financially secure, respected in the community, and doing work that mattered. More importantly, she was happy. Not the same happiness she'd known with Samuel. That was gone forever, and she'd stopped pretending otherwise. But a new happiness, built on her own strength and the legacy of love he'd left her. Aurora turned off the lights and locked the barn. Tomorrow, a new semester would begin. More students would arrive, eager to learn. More broken furniture would be transformed into beauty. More lives would be changed. Samuel's silence had hidden the greatest care in the world. His secret had saved her, and his love continued to save others, one restored peace at a time. If Aurora's story moved you, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. We share powerful stories every week about love, dedication, and the quiet ways people protect those they cherish. Leave a comment below. Have you ever discovered that someone was protecting you in ways you didn't understand? Have you found unexpected strength after devastating loss? Share your story. Someone reading might need your inspiration today. And we'd love to know, where in the world are you watching this from? Leave a comment with your city or country. We have viewers from over 100 nations, and it's incredible to see how Aurora's story of transformation resonates across every culture and continent. Whether you're watching from São Paulo, Tokyo, New York, Lagos, or anywhere else, tell us where Aurora's journey inspired you today. Aurora teaches us profound truths about love, resilience, and the courage to rebuild. She teaches us that the deepest love often works in silence. Samuel never told Aurora what he was building. He worked alone for 30 years, creating her security without praise or recognition. He proved that true devotion shows itself not in grand gestures, but in quiet, persistent preparation. The people who love us most may be building our safety nets in ways we'll never see until we need them. She teaches us that it's never too late to discover your strength. At 68, widowed and broke, Aurora could have given up. Instead, she broke into a locked barn, discovered her husband's legacy, fought off her greedy children, and built a school that changes lives. Age doesn't determine capability. Circumstances don't determine worth. You're stronger than you know, especially when tested. Most importantly, Aurora teaches us that honoring love means continuing the work of those we've lost. Samuel built the barn, but Aurora transformed it from a collection of furniture into a living legacy that teaches, inspires, and helps people build better lives. The best way to honor someone's sacrifice is to build something meaningful on the foundation they left. Don't forget to comment with your location. Let's see how far Aurora's story of love and resilience reaches around the world. Thank you for joining us for Aurora's incredible journey from despair to triumph. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that broken things, furniture, hearts, lives, can be restored with patience, skill, and love. We'll see you in the next story.